So what are we doing with this incredible gift of a free enterprise system that gives everyone the ability to dream big and the potential to succeed beyond those dreams? Well, over the past 7 years, we've seen a disturbing move away from individual responsibility and reliance on free markets to a dependence on government. As President Reagan once said, there's a clear cause and effect here that is as neat and predictable as a law of physics. As government expands, liberty contracts. And as usual, he was right. The reality is that when government takes power, it takes it from someone, and that someone is you. Whenever government gives you something, it takes something from you, your independence, your freedom. So why do some people want to expand government power and diminish this incredible free enterprise system? Well, some are well-intended. They believe government can be a force for good, and government certainly serves a role. The Constitution's preamble states that our government was formed to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty. But we shouldn't ignore the reality that government inevitably falls under the control of people who view themselves as an elite group, entitled and better able to make decisions for us because they believe we're incapable of making intelligent decisions for ourselves. They'd take Adam Smith's invisible hand, the millions of consumers guiding economic growth and innovation, and replace it with the very visible fist of government. Rather than the guiding hand lifting people up, they prefer the rough and destructive fist of government knocking dreamers and doers down. Over the last 7 years, this very visible fist of government has been particularly destructive. We've seen $800 billion in so-called government stimulus spending, putting money in the hands of businesses and individuals the government selected, something the government does very poorly. Think Solyndra and Fisker. Government spending projects intended to infuse cash into the economy created nothing real or permanent. The problem is that businesses don't invest for growth tomorrow based on temporary government benefits today. Think cash for clunkers. But what about infrastructure investments? Well, while investments in infrastructure is both a proper function of government and very necessary, at best it's a temporary driver of growth. Businesses obviously need roads and bridges to get goods to market, and people obviously need them to get to their jobs. Politicians hoping to show at least some short-term job growth often find such projects particularly appealing. But you don't build roads and bridges to create jobs. You build roads and bridges because people need to get to their jobs, and businesses need to get their goods to market. Rather than roads and bridges creating jobs, it's American workers and businesses that create the need for roads and bridges, as well as the tax dollars to pay for them. You create a sustainable job by building a business, not a bridge. We've also seen the effects of Dodd-Frank legislation intended to regulate the financial sector, but resulting in massive closures of community banks, unable to afford the cost of government compliance. These are the very banks small businesses depend upon for growth, and the economy in turn depends on those small businesses for its growth. Obamacare, still unpopular with its mandates and penalties that oppress business growth. It's rapidly entering a death spiral as the economic assumptions upon which it was based collapse. The brutal truth is that the American economy has experienced a discouragingly anemic recovery since the Great Recession ended. The Obama administration promised 4% GDP growth if Congress approved its $800 billion in stimulus spending. But under President Obama, economic growth has averaged a paltry 2%. Last quarter, it was 1.2%. That means catching up to pre-recession employment levels has been agonizingly slow. After more than 6 years of recovery, 5 million more people are working now than were working when the Great Recession began in December of 2007. Sounds good, right? But the employable population increased by nearly 20 million people. That's 4 times the number of people that found jobs. And perhaps even more disturbing, only about 2 million of those who found jobs found full-time jobs. In other words, 60% are working part-time. Now, a part-time job may well be the path to a career, but there needs to be a career at the end of that path. And with anemic economic growth, and business closures exceeding business startups throughout the Obama presidency. That's the first time that's ever happened. Careers are in short supply. The labor force participation rate, that's the percentage of people working or actively looking for work, has been 63% or below for the last 23 months. When was it last as low as 63%? Over 37 years ago during the Carter administration. It stood at 63% in March. The problem is that the people who would rely on big government instead of free markets simply don't understand how jobs and careers are created. Their assumptions seem to be that while the jobs will be there no matter what they do to expand government and impede the ability of businesses to grow. Clearly, over the last 7 years, we've seen that's just not the case. It's American businesses that create jobs. And let's talk about how.